Well, então, Nath, o que você acha agora, depois de tudo isso? A gente ainda tem algumas coisas para ver, né? Nessa manhã.
Temos muitas coisas, inclusive, gente, tá incrível, né? Incrível a apresentação da Elisa. Quero aproveitar e agradecer a todos e todas que estão nos acompanhando, né, Rodrigo?
Verdade.
Que isso para brilhantar aqui com a gente nessa jornada e vamos continuar por enquanto em Portugal. Porque agora vamos conhecer um pouco mais sobre o mercado de inovação na União Europeia. Contaremos com a participação de Felipe Delacqua, vice-presidente comercial da Vetex, Rui Coutinho, diretor executivo da Porto Business School, Filipa Pinto de Carvalho, cofundadora da AGPC e Moss e Copper, e claro, com um moderador, Rodrigo de Alvarenga, que está fazendo com maestria, hein, Rodrigo?
Obrigado, Nath. Eu espero que, né, no final do dia hoje, a principal experiência que a gente pretende passar para todos que estão nos acompanhando é, na verdade, vou usar aquela expressão um banho de loja, mas um banho de loja nesse caso aplicado para o seguinte. É muito importante que a gente entenda e conheça o que está acontecendo no resto do mundo, até para que a gente possa entender onde estamos, né, como o próprio vídeo manifesto do evento, né, onde estamos, de que maneira a gente consegue perceber as nossas melhores habilidades, aquilo que a gente pode perceber em outros, não só outras pessoas, mas outros ecossistemas, que a gente possa buscar parcerias, negócios, etc. Né. Uma coisa importante que eu acho que muitas vezes fica fora de contexto: o Brasil é uma economia relativamente fechada e o foi por toda a sua história. E esse fato, né, não entrando no mérito de discutir economia, mas só falando o seguinte: um dos resultados disso acaba sendo o quê? Acaba sendo uma pouca conexão com os outros. E isso, traduzido para os dias de hoje, faz com que a gente veja, por exemplo, o quê? A onda de startups, né, de tecnologia, de inovação através da criação de novos negócios, ela não é de agora, ela já vem de algumas décadas aí, principalmente capitaneada lá por aquilo que se convencionou como sendo a gênese, né, desse movimento lá no Vale do Silício, mas isso veio andando e o Brasil entrou nessa onda muito mais tarde. Por quê? Porque a gente tem essa cultura que é muito fechada, né? Nós temos um baixo volume para o tamanho da nossa economia de negócios internacionais, nós temos uma baixa conexão, o número percentual de jovens que fazem uma temporada fora para estudar fora, né? Um exchange internacional no Brasil é 11 vezes menor do que a média da OCDE, e assim sucessivamente. A taxa de pessoas que falam inglês no Brasil ela é muito baixa, o que significa dizer que automaticamente isso cria uma série de dificuldades, né? No passado era muito mais complexo lidar com tudo isso, mas hoje é muito mais fácil, né? Então, cada vez mais é importante que a gente crie pontos de conexão, entenda o que está acontecendo fora, saiba aonde bater, né? Eu vou para Portugal, poxa, tem uma startup em Portugal, eu posso bater naquela porta. Eu quero ir para o Oriente Médio, que é um mercado gigante. O Oriente Médio é um mercado enorme, é um mercado tão grande quanto o mercado da China, se você pensar como um todo. Né? E a gente não imagina. A maior parte das vezes, o empreendedor brasileiro, ele pensa no Brasil, né? Mais recentemente, a gente começa a ouvir com mais força internacionalização de startups. Mas isso é um negócio muito recente, porque até então o foco é sempre assim: Brasil, não, vamos lançar no Brasil, vamos construir no Brasil. Você falava de internacionalização alguns anos para trás e basicamente o que você ouvia era o seguinte: mas por que eu vou internacionalizar? O mercado brasileiro é enorme. E isso não é verdade, é uma pseudo-verdade. O Brasil é enorme, mas se você fragmenta o mercado brasileiro na capacidade de renda dos grupos, o mercado já não fica tão enorme, dependendo do que você queira oferecer. Se você coloca em contexto que o brasileiro tem uma renda familiar média muito baixa, né, um índice de digitalização muito baixo na média no Brasil, apesar do acesso, né, mas tem mais telefones celulares no Brasil do que tem pessoas.
Sim. Mas assim, só para finalizar, porque os nossos convidados já estão nos aguardando, Rodrigo, o que você acha é fundamental para abrir a nossa mente? É super importante o que a Goon faz para mostrar o mundo, né, outros países, mas o que você acha que falta para o nosso país dar esse upgrade?
Olha, eu vou dizer o seguinte, e eu até vou querer voltar nesse ponto mais tarde hoje, mas falta para a gente ambição, estratégia e planejamento. E por ambição não é a mesma coisa que ganância. Ambição é aquilo que move, por exemplo, os atletas a quererem performar melhor do que eles performaram na vez anterior, por exemplo, né? Então acho que falta esse trinômio, ambição, planejamento e estratégia. A gente, infelizmente, falhou ao longo da história em conseguir combinar essas três coisas. Mas vamos lá, que os nossos convidados já estão aqui conosco.
Sim.
E a gente volta nisso daqui a pouco.
Então, fica com você, Rodrigo.
Legal. Well, I would like to welcome three very special guests in this panel. We're going to have Felipe, and Rui, and we're going to be discussing a little bit more about Portugal as an innovation hub. So I would like to ask our guests to open their mics. And if you allow me, I would like to start with Felipe, asking her to introduce herself very briefly, so we can move then to Felipe and then to Rui. Felipe.
Hi,
welcome.
Rodrigo.
Hi.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I'm super happy to be here with you today. I don't know if you can hear me well. Okay. So I'm a lawyer. I have worked as a lawyer for more than 10 years. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you're hearing me. I cannot see you.
Don't worry.
I'm sorry?
We can hear you. We can hear you well.
Okay. Because I'm not seeing you at the moment. Okay. So I worked as a lawyer for more than 10 years with a special focus in immigration law, corporate law, and foreign direct investment. In 2015, I co-founded Moss & Cooper, which is a consultancy working with startups and entrepreneurs in two main areas, business development and fundraising. So we help startups and entrepreneurs to build their fundraising strategy and to understand amongst the tools to finance their project, which are the most suitable. And this means obviously negotiating with banks, but then building projects and submitting applications to European Union and Portuguese funding schemes, crowdfunding campaigns, and finally making the bridge between those startups and business angels and VCs in Portugal. Then in 2016, I co-founded AGPC, Almeida Garrett Pinto Carvalho, which is a firm based in Lisbon, specifically focused on assisting clients from other countries who are willing to invest, launch a business, or relocate to Portugal.
Em princípio todos, não em detalhe, depois tenho as pessoas na minha equipa que fazem esse acompanhamento mais detalhado. Mas posso ajudar, sim.
Pronto, eu estava a falar por causa dos biopólios.
Rui, vamos lá? Felipe, how about you?
Hi, Rodrigo.
Felipe? Hi.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. My name is Felipe Delacqua. I'm one of from Vitex. Vitex is an e-commerce platform born in Brazil, and nowadays we have operations in more than 42 countries around the world. We in a growth stage right now and try to consolidate our marketing in Europe, in the United States, and here in Brazil, we are the biggest and the leader in a commerce platform.
Rui, how about you? Good to see you too.
Hi everybody. I am so sorry. Lots of things happening at the same time. The things that happened during COVID that are still among us. So I am Rui Coutinho. I'm executive director at Porto Business School. Porto Business School is headquarters in Porto here in Portugal, and it's a non-profit association that gathers 40 of the most important companies in Portugal and the University of Porto, which is a public university. We are a business school, a classical business school in that sense. So we run mainly executive education. We work on upskilling and reskilling executives. So we are postgraduate, post-experience school, and we run from MBAs to other sorts of programs.
Thank you very much, Rui. Well, first of all, I would like to explain to our audience that this is not a panel organized by chance. We have here a very interesting combination of people. From Filipa, we have someone who is an expert in helping corporates and companies, startups and entrepreneurs to disembark in Portugal. And that's important because we just saw the last panel. Portugal is becoming more and more one of the most important hubs in innovation in Europe and for sure in the world. Then we have Filipe. Filipe from a large startup that was born in Brazil and went international, also using Portugal as a hub to this soft land in Europe. And then we have Rui, representing Porto Business School, one of the most prestigious universities in Portugal and in Europe, as well as a very relevant figure in the startup ecosystem in Portugal. And that's important because this combination allows us to better understand why Portugal is becoming such an important hub of innovation, what's going on, what has been done that is at this point supporting all these changes, and not just in Portugal, and not just, I would say, as a hub to soft land in Europe, but also fostering an entire ecosystem. So I would like to introduce my first question to you guys. Starting with Filipe. Why Portugal, Filipe?
Actually, if you see the past years, Portugal has increased a lot our security. So everyone here has a family, want to live in a country with a very a secure place. And the weather of Portugal is a very similar to Brazil. It's a very good to live. We have basically the same culture as we have here in Brazil, and we have a lot of Brazilian going or moving to Portugal to live their lives there. So Portugal now it's a very a nice place to live, to make a family, to study, as you can see with a Porto business. So Portugal's become a very nice place to make their lives. This is one thing that we are looking for. The second one is about the IT guys. So as you told in the last panel, Portugal it's a very strong hub of innovation, and it's very easily to do business in Portugal and start a good startups. So we have a lot of work and a lot of ecosystems to consolidate this kind of business in Portugal. And of course, we have a good players there in Portugal, like Farfetch, that's for past 10 years stimulating the marketing to bring e-commerce ecosystems. So Portugal become a place to a very nice place to have a workforce for digital commerce, and actually Vitex has an operation in Portugal for 6 years ago. But when it starts in Portugal, we start a partnership with a digital agents named Loba, and Loba was responsible to start the marketing for us in Portugal. And now this year we start our operation with our office. So we have now more than 44 jobs open for Portugal, and will be a very nice experience to understand how Portugal has increased the work for startups, technology, and ecosystem.
How about you, Filipe? Why Portugal? Why should people
Well,
bother to go for Portugal?
Well, I was hearing Felipe, and obviously, besides the safety and lifestyle and weather that are always named or mentioned when we talk about Portugal, I was hearing Felipe, and I was thinking that yes, you not only find very good talent, engineering talent, and not only that, but highly qualified professionals who are fluent in English. But then, more than that, we are also finding that that's becoming a country attractive to highly qualified professionals from other countries who are actually willing to relocate. So it's becoming increasingly more easy for foreign companies to launch here and attract a pool of professionals to work from here. And then I would also say, and accompanying some clients and companies coming from instance, from Brazil, and seeing Portugal as a gateway to the European market. So it's a mature market where you can easily and with a reduced cost test your business model. And then there's this proximity, this small distance between your product here and the market and the European market. So it's easy to then expand to the other European markets. And then I would also highlight the big investment that's been made to boost the entrepreneurial ecosystem here, also to make the right funding tools available for investors and entrepreneurs in the country. And then other benefits that become very attractive when people are considering their relocation or the relocation of their company, such as the visas. We have the startup visa for entrepreneurs who want to launch a startup here. We have the tech visa, which makes it easier for companies to bring highly qualified professionals and get the visa for them to work here. And then you also have a specific visa for investors, the golden visa. Within this framework of the golden visa, there are at least 3 types of investments that you can make through which you can invest in a company in Portugal.
Well, thank you, Filipe. Rui, why Portugal? Why should corporates or startups or entrepreneurs go for Portugal?
Well, because of everything that Philippe said. I will not repeat them. They made a brilliant case for Portugal. I would add, perhaps on top of it, Portugal is living a very specific moment, a very particular moment in our history. There's quite a unique atmosphere going on here in the ecosystem. It's a moment where we're really turning the structure of our economy and more building its foundations on knowledge, on innovation, on technology, even on classical traditional sectors. Manufacturing sectors, for instance, more and more Portugal is not selling goods, but selling knowledge, selling innovation. So it is a moment in time where, for instance, our ecosystem it's a 10 million people country, okay? And we have 4 unicorns, bound to have 5 most likely in the next year. So is a moment where really the ecosystem is consolidating itself, not only as a great place for a startup to be created, to be founded, but as a true, open, collaborative, knowledge-based economy. And talent is being attracted because of that. New business is being attracted because of that. New knowledge is being attracted because of that. If you think, for instance, that just BMW and Mercedes alone have located in Portugal their main research and tech centers for the autonomous vehicles. So you see a consolidating, growing, vibrant ecosystem in a moment in our history that is really one of a kind.
I'm going to start with you now because you just mentioned some corporates, large corporates that are basing their human capital in Portugal. But we also have Google, we also have tech companies that are investing more and more in Portugal to be there because not just the human capital, but the entire atmosphere seems to be fostering this knowledge-based economy / entrepreneurial environment / new ventures environment in a way that it's not seen in so many places. But you and I have a history and we have done things together before. So I would like to hear your take on the human capital side. As an executive director at Porto Business School, which by the way is an awesome university. I know that you have been investing in a lot of different programs, etc. Could you give us your take on how have you been preparing the human capital to foster all these advancements?
Yeah, I can share my 2 cents on it. So we have problems regarding talent, okay? We have a shortage of talent. This is something that is happening on the Western world, if you want, North America, Europe. We don't have enough people. This is mainly due to demographics. We don't have enough people on science, technology, engineering, and math, even though we are the country in Europe with the highest number of engineers per capita, but still there's a talent shortage. We are making an effort in that direction, mainly at early stages of school, where we're trying to make the case for young kids to understand that science, technology, engineering, arts, and math are great or present great opportunities in the future. But we are also doing an amazing effort on reskilling and upskilling. So tech companies understood, they were the first to understand the potential of upskilling and reskilling other engineers, people from social sciences, people that were working on big classical legacy companies here in Portugal in traditional sectors. And that upskilling and reskilling effort is really paying off. It's quite interesting, and it's now as the ecosystem consolidates slowly. This is not an endeavor that happened overnight. We have been working on it for the last 15 years. Our unicorns were born 10 years ago, were founded 10 years ago. So this is a lengthy, structured process. But these endeavors of reskilling and upskilling are now addressing other positions that now become very relevant in our ecosystem. So if you 5 years, 6 years ago, a big tech company that located in Portugal would come for developers. Now, more and more, they also come for product managers, business developers. So there are other opportunities other than coding or developing. There are other opportunities out there because the business becomes more mature, the ecosystem becomes more mature, and Portugal is moving a little bit away from this idea of nearshore shared services and becoming more of knowledge centers for these big IT companies like Google, like Amazon Web Services, and many others. So the main challenge is that we continue on this road of upskilling and reskilling, making sure that people understand that this is a journey for life. The idea of lifelong learning, the idea that we will not have the same kind of career for life. Even if we move companies, we will also move away to other kinds of functions, more on the technical side, more on the management side, and we need to be able to learn, unlearn, relearn as fast as possible. The government is now creating a big emphasis with our new instrument. So the European Commission, out of the pandemic, created this recovery and resilience plans for Europe, the idea of Next Gen EU, and the fundamental base of Next Gen EU is digital transformation and climate transition. And both of these pillars are critical for all the public investment that will happen in the next years. Portugal alone will invest just in this program 16 billion euros on the next 4 years. If you add on top of that the normal framework programs, funding framework programs that will happen now, the Portugal 2030 and things like that, we'll have a public investment that will be close to 70 billion euros, and with a big emphasis on upskilling, reskilling, digital technology, digital transformation, carbon neutrality, climate transition, and that becomes, I will say, that will become the priority for the next years. So you see a consolidated ecosystem that keeps on nurturing its talent, attracting foreign talent. Right now with the pandemic, we are also facing competition to our talent that can, from Portugal, can work anywhere in the world. So now it's much more globalized and open competition for talent, because remote work allows for this. So there are challenges, but there are also opportunities, an opportunity to attract more talent, not only the investors, but also foreign talent that choose Portugal for the reasons that Filipa and Philippe just mentioned. On top of that, all the upskilling, all the reskilling, on the focus on nurturing talent that becomes strategic in this knowledge-based ecosystem.
Wow, that's awesome, Rui. So Felipe, you kind of mentioned talent, but given Rui's comments, and from your point of view, how talent contributed to the decision of moving more and more into Europe through Portugal?
Rui told us a very interesting point, because when you saw these young guys that moved to United States, for example, they moved to there because there they can have a good environment to start a new business. They have a very good courses and universities like MIT, Harvard, Yale to make entrepreneur course. So it's a place to make money, easily to start a startup, and easily to continue studying in a good university. So when you talk about Portugal, as Rui told, we have a very nice environment and a lot of investments from governments to bring these talents to Portugal. And nowadays, with the COVID pandemic, we can see how easy and how productive is work from home, for example. So I'm in São Paulo, Brazil, and I'm almost a year working just from home. And basically 99% of the engineer of VTEX is working from home. And when you're talking about the safety, the weather, the country, the ecosystems, and everything you can choose to live in a country, nowadays we can just work for Microsoft in Seattle, for example, and we can live in Portugal, in Porto, and other beautiful cities that Portugal has. So nowadays, with COVID, we have a very nice place in Portugal to attractive talents. And I went to Web Summit for at least 3 years ago, in the last 3 events of Web Summit, and I can see how it's the Portugal is a convidative country, convidative city to make the startups and the ecosystems of digital transformation work better. So I think it's just the beginning. I think Portugal has made a very good job for the past 10 years, but now after the pandemic of COVID, we can see Portugal as the best a place to work and to live for engineers, entrepreneurs, and of course, Vtex as a company that's want to be in the top of the innovation, and where, as we said, as a innovation company working in digital commerce, Portugal will be a very nice place to attract these talents to work with us.
Thank you, Felipe. Filipa, how about you? Regarding talents, you have mentioned before different visas, different entry points, let's say this. But let's imagine a talent or a talented person. How this person could take this opportunity to join the Portuguese ecosystem and to foster all that we are talking here today?
Well, I would say there are probably three pillars that are always included in the discussion when we are thinking about the strategy of coming to Portugal. And I would say one of them, of course, in terms of immigration, because if you are intending to relocate, you need to know how is it that you will be authorized to do so. And there are several options depending on what are your goals for Portugal. So if you are an entrepreneur willing to launch a startup here, there are at least two main types of visas to which you can apply to. And one of them is fairly recent, which is the startup visa, and it was enacted thinking about entrepreneurs from other markets and trying to attract them to the ecosystem here, so they are able to apply online through a simplified procedure, and once they are accepted, they are accepted at a certified incubator here in Portugal as well. So that's good because they will have that those tools. When they come, they are not alone. They are incubated in a certified incubator with professionals who will be able to help them in their first steps. And then there are other visas. I would just briefly mention the tech visa, more focused on making it easier for companies based in Portugal, and this can include Portuguese companies, but also companies from other countries launching a branch here. And we are seeing more and more, fortunately, mature companies from other continents seeing Portugal as their gateway to the European market, so establishing here a branch or subsidiary. And those companies can benefit from this as well. This tech visa is a visa that will enable them to attract highly qualified professionals from other markets to our country. And then if you are an investor, there are other types of visas. One of the best known is the golden visa, which allows you through this investment that you make in a company in Portugal to be eligible for a visa, so to be free to come and go to Portugal and Europe, live and work here if you wish or not. And I would say from my experience, fortunately, we are seeing more and more investors from other markets, and I would highlight the US as well, interested in investing in companies here or in funds who are focused on startups. And this is quite recent, at least in my experience, and I think it will also be something important to boost the ecosystem here. And then there are two other pillars, funding, their fundraising strategies, and as Philippe was mentioning, from my experience, this is also something that companies always want to consider when they are considering and making their investment plan for their activities and operations in Portugal and Europe, because obviously taking advantage of these funds is something that we will enable them to grow at least at a faster pace. And we are talking about funds that will help in their internationalization, so expanding to other markets, in their innovation and qualification activities, and also in their research and development activities. And here I would connect this with talent again, because there are specific grants that support companies and in their research and development activities, namely with the costs of their employees conducting these activities within the company. And then a third pillar I would highlight is taxation. And the tax framework that the Portuguese government has enacted in order to make Portugal more attractive, either to entrepreneurs and individual investors or entrepreneurs or companies. And here I would highlight a specific regime which was enacted to individuals coming to Portugal, so highly qualified professionals, entrepreneurs or investors who can benefit from the called non-habitual residence regime, which very briefly gives benefits and sometimes exemptions to people moving their domicile, their tax domicile to Portugal. And then there are also tax benefits for the companies, and specifically, again, connecting with the talent, companies conducting research and development activities here are eligible for specific tax benefits. And this is something that, from my experience, is also being very competitive and attractive when companies are still trying to decide in which market within the European market to establish their subsidiary.
Wow, thank you very much, Filipa. So, starting with you, okay, we have talked about the ecosystem first, then talent. What about the future? What do you see from this point on, Filipa, in terms of, what's going to happen from this point on? From your perspective, an expert dealing with either investors, entrepreneurs, startups, or corporates moving into Portugal to take the most out of this friendly and well-structured ecosystem. So what now?
Well, one of the things that I would highlight, and connecting to something you were mentioning before, and Rui, I think, was mentioning as well, which is something that companies and entrepreneurs with whom we work always mention, is that they are very surprised when they come with the openness of the Portuguese entities, entrepreneurs, companies, incubators, to collaborate. So the openness to build partnerships with these people and companies coming from other countries. And I think this is something that was always there, but now I feel that is boosting the growing of this ecosystem as we see more and more people coming with different goals, different types of people, if I may say so, in the sense that we see highly qualified digital nomads coming as well to Portugal. As I was mentioning before, very mature companies from other continents that now are seeing Portugal as a good place for them to open a branch. And then when we link that with the funding that the European and the goals that the European Union want to achieve, and the increase that from, just to give you an example, we are now ending the framework of the Portugal 2020, which was the European Union funding framework allocated to Portugal for this period. And we will be starting a new one this year and until 2027. And we see that there was an increase in budget available of more than 100%. So the European Union, and as Rui was mentioning, is highly invested in strengthening the scientific and technological base and boost Europe's innovation capacity and competitiveness. So I think that we will see this investment growing in the next years.
Well, thank you, Filipa, for that. And how about you, Rui? In general, what challenges do you foresee from this point on, and in particular about human capital?
Okay, there are some quite interesting phenomena. I think we are still trying to understand how companies will position their workforce/workplace strategies in the post-COVID world. So I'm quite curious to understand how big will remote work be, and in that circumstance, how it will affect positively or negatively our ecosystem. We know that Portugal has been placing itself as a great destination for digital nomads, as Filipa mentioned. We have some of the most interesting projects for digital nomads out there right now, and of course it connect of our location, our safety, our weather, our food, the costs of living here. But I'm curious to understand, and I'm trying to monitor how will talent in Portugal will or will not start working for companies that are located all over the world without having to leave Portugal. Why is this important for me? Because I need to understand how fierce will the competition for talent be in the next years. And we know that this competition was already fierce just with the companies that were locating in Portugal, founded or locating themselves in Portugal. So if we had already a war on talent without the competition from every single company in the world that can hire someone from Porto or from Lisbon, and that person can stay in Porto or in Lisbon, we need to understand that impact. Also the impact on salaries. Will these people get salaries from Berlin if they work for a German company, or will they get salaries from Portugal because they are located in Portugal, working from home or from a co-working space? So there's some volatility here that we need to understand how it will consolidate. So we need to understand how will it happen, and then we will understand the impact. Of course, we are positive and we are optimistic. We think that it will be something that we are prepared for, that we are competitive for, and actually, more and more we can start. We believe that we can start attracting other talent that is all over the world, that can work remotely all over the world for Portuguese-based companies or Portuguese-based technological centers or research centers or knowledge centers of big multinational companies. That is pretty much what it is on my radar. Aside from talent, I'm trying to understand how the financial system and the financial part of the ecosystem will consolidate. We have been seeing in the last years some growth in our local finance ecosystem, venture capital, seed capital, and then more complex instruments with private equity funds and so on, have been paying lots of attention to Portugal. We have already our own starting to have some dimension and some scale, which is important to attract more business. So we're seeing new rounds of investment becoming bigger in volume, in amount of money. Just last week we had a tech company here from the north of Portugal that raised 8 million on a Series A on top of seed rounds that they had generated, and they managed to do it almost with Portuguese-based financing, or investing. So I'm curious to understand, within the financial world and how it is evolving, there's lots of liquidity out there. So how will the Portuguese ecosystem for investment will develop itself? We know that we are attracting big attention from the main players out there in the world. I think all of the big international VCs are paying attention to Portugal. There's some sort of fear of missing out regarding the Portuguese ecosystem because so much is going on. But I would consider these two approaches. How will COVID impact definitively in the way we manage talent, the way we are attracting talent, or our talent can be attracted to work remotely to companies in other locations. So how will HR, workforce will look like after COVID? And the second, how our investment ecosystem, our funding, our finance ecosystem will consolidate itself.
Thank you, Rui. Felipe, going back to you, final remarks. How do you see Portugal for a company like not just Vitex, but as a unicorn or as a startup that is scaling up? Could you summarize everything that we discussed from your point of view on why Portugal? Coming back to our starting point, what are your final remarks on why Portugal? If you were advising to the next startup from outside that is considering soft landing into the European market through Portugal, what would be your recommendation?
Okay, as we told, I think we need more examples to in home, like who we told. Portugal has a 4 unicorns, and next year maybe a one more. And when we will become a country with a very nice examples of a huge company that starts 10 years ago and now it's a one top of leader in their category, uh, we have a lot of uh, followers. So when you see here in Brazil, I think in Brazil, our first unicorn was 3 years ago. And since that, 3 years ago, we have a more than 90 unicorns. So, and not, it's just not the market, because when you see, for example, Stone, a payment company here in Brazil, Stone, it's just here in Brazil, but it's a very huge unicorn, more than $9 billion, and a public company in Nasdaq. And it's a company just making revenue here in Brazil. So if you saw this example here in Brazil, and of course in Portugal with a lot of others unicorn, you see you have a very nice examples to make the dreams of the new entrepreneurs to founding their companies in Portugal, have access, a lot of access, as Ho told about venture capital, private equity, and a lot of fundings. So I can start my company in Portugal. I can have access to money and grow my company. And of course, when you talking about the new kind of technology that's a very force of VTEX, that's our ecosystem. We created a very huge ecosystem of other more than 1,000 companies here in Brazil that works with VTEX in the digital transformation. And I see Portugal is very similar, because as we have a Portugal very attractive to start a new company, attractive to founders to make our company and have funding to grow the company, we can start a very huge ecosystems for a lot of categories. For example, there's in Portugal, we can see a very huge startups working just for the retail. I saw 2 years ago in Portugal, I visited a lot of startups with a very nice and a good products just for the retail. So if you see this mention, this kind of category, and when VTEX landed in Portugal, we can start a very a good partnership with a lot of startups that's working with retail and making a workforce with a Brazilian company and Portugal company. So I think this kind of technology, microservice, will be very nice to make a partnership with a lot of company and make the company and make the markets grow a lot with this integration.
Thank you, Felipe. Filipa, final remarks. If you could advise a company that is considering soft landing into Europe through Portugal, what would be your final remarks?
Well, I would say again the openness of this booming ecosystem and of all the entities and startups involved in this ecosystem to collaborate and to start partnerships with people coming in. I think that this openness also comes from the understanding that all these qualified professionals and companies coming in also have a positive impact to create locally and then more broadly in the European Union. And then I would say there's there are the tools in place to build a very strong strategy when coming and launching here, targeting the European market. So the funding I was mentioning, connected with the taxes and a very attractive immigration policy. I would say those three.
Thank you. Awesome. Rui, final remarks.
Come. We are here. We are open for business. We are a truly open collaborative ecosystem. More and more opportunities of business also arise here. It's not just a place with great talent, cheap costs, great food, and great sun. It's a place for business where you can do much more business with big companies, big multinational tech companies, but also with our local companies that are more and more competitive on the manufacturing industry, on retail, and we are global. We are global. We have a global mindset. We inherited that from previous centuries. We are global. We have a global mindset. We have a global focus. So you can be global also from Portugal. I like that.
Thank you very much, Rui. Well, guys, first of all, again, it's been a pleasure to host you here. Awesome to hear from you what are your thoughts on Portugal as a soft landing opportunity, as a hub to develop and foster innovation, as well as a nice to have destination like Philippe said, right? Thank you very much for being here with us. It's been a pleasure. I hope to see you soon.